Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and it's good to see you all here today. So, in recent weeks, we've been reflecting upon the Dhammapada, the verses that were recorded among the early Buddhist teachings. And it's divided into 26 chapters, and we're picking and choosing some, but the chapter I'm discussing today is called the Buddha. It's a chapter about the Buddha. And it has some verses in it that are very well known, which is one reason for picking this. And another reason is I think it brings up some questions for reflection that are worthy. So the translation I'll be basing this reading on is by Acharya Buddharakkhita, who is a contemporary. I don't know if he's still living, but a 20th century in any case, Indian monk who studied in Sri Lanka and in Myanmar. So would have a Theravadan perspective. The translation of most of this is pretty uncontroversial, so most any translation you read will be similar. The Buddha. By what track can you trace that trackless Buddha of limitless range, whose victory nothing can undo, whom none of the vanquished defilements can ever pursue? By what track can you trace that trackless Buddha of limitless range, in whom exists no longer the entangled and embroiling craving that perpetuates becoming? Those wise ones who are devoted to meditation who delight in the calm of renunciation. Such mindful ones, supreme Buddhas, even the gods hold dear. Rare is it to be born a human. Hard is the life of mortals. Difficult is it to gain the opportunity of hearing the sublime truth, and difficult to encounter is the arising of Buddhas. To avoid all evil, to cultivate good, and to purify one's mind, this is the teaching of all Buddhas. Enduring patience is the highest austerity. Nibbana is supreme, say the Buddhas. One is not a true follower who harms another, nor a true renunciate who oppresses others. Not despising, not harming, restraint according to the ethical precepts, moderation in food, dwelling in solitude, devotion to meditation. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. There is no satisfying sensual desires, even with a shower of gold coins, for sensual pleasures give little satisfaction and much pain. Having understood this, the wise person finds no delight even in heavenly pleasures. The disciples of the Supreme Buddha delights in the destruction of craving. Driven by fear, do men go for refuge to many places, to hills, woods, groves, trees, and shrines? Such indeed is no safe refuge. Such is not the refuge supreme. Not by resorting to such a refuge is one released from all suffering. She who has gone for refuge to the Buddha, the teaching, and the community penetrates with transcendent wisdom the Four Noble Truths: suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the Noble Eightfold Path leading to the cessation of suffering. This indeed is the safe refuge, this the refuge supreme. Having gone to such a refuge, one is released from all suffering. So there are several parts to that. And I'll just make a few comments about some of these verses that I just read. The verse number 182, rare is it to be born a human, hard is the life of mortals, and difficult to gain the opportunity to hear the Dharma and to meet a Buddha. So this is a commonly quoted passage. And it emphasizes the preciousness of this life, of the opportunity it affords. And despite the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or perhaps even because of them, we have the opportunity to develop wisdom and compassion. Now, as I was thinking about that, I was thinking, well, that's easy for me to say, living here in comfort in Overland, Missouri. I imagine there are many in such states of misery that considering this human life as precious is just hard to grasp. A mother in a war zone who has difficulty finding food for her children and watches them grow thin is going to have a hard time thinking about how precious this human life is. But for, I think I think I can speak for all of us, we can appreciate how rare the opportunity to encounter the wisdom teachings wherever we find them, and to work with them, reflect upon them, and to try to put them into practice. The next three little verses are often recited in ceremonies in monasteries. Certainly at the time of the Buddha, it was the practice to recite these every week at the time of the full moon, the first half moon, the new moon, the second half moon, and again the full moon every week. The first of these verses is often referred to as the pure precepts. To avoid all evil, to cultivate good, and to purify one's mind. There's a Zen story about how a teacher was instructing a young monk in this teaching. And the young monk responded, "Well, that's simple. A child of 8 could understand that." And the teacher responded, "Yes, a child of 8 can understand it, but a person of 80 can't fulfill it." To avoid evil, cultivate good, purify the mind. In the Mahayana tradition, and particularly in the Zen tradition, the third of those, purification of the mind, is substituted with another phrase, either to save all beings or to be of benefit to all beings, as I think a reaction to the perception that some of the early Buddhist teachings seem to be self-absorbed, that didn't really reach out to others, that seemed to be too solipsistic. I think that's debatable, but nonetheless, that is the way the tradition evolved. To me, purification of the mind is a process. It's not something that can be accomplished. The mind, at least for the vast majority of us, will never be pure. I certainly don't anticipate encountering purity of the mind in my lifetime. If it hasn't happened yet. But the process of working with the mind, observing the mind, becoming intimate with the mind, and understanding at least some of its delusions is not a self-absorbed or solipsistic process. It's a public service. Just like keeping your body clean is a public service and benefits others as well. There's no satisfying sensual desires even with a shower of gold coins. And I think the same can be said of other attractions, wealth, fame, power. We see this. We especially notice it in others, if not always in ourselves, how all of these appetites are essentially insatiable. And insatiable in kind of a cruel way, but where there are diminishing returns. The more you get, the more you want. And nothing is ever quite as good as that first hit. So you keep chasing it. The disciple of the Supreme Buddha delights in the destruction of craving. Destruction by learning about it, seeing it, understanding the process. These are the teachings of the Buddha. Driven by fear, do men go for refuge in many places, physical shelters, the hills, woods, groves, trees, shrines, And these are no safe refuge. There's no place to hide. There's no safe place from dukkha, from the distress of the human experience. The saying, wherever you go, there you are. There's no physical shelter that provides refuge. And the Buddha taught that the refuge is, we might say, internal, if we want to look at it that way. Refuge in the Buddha's teaching, and the Sangha, the community of those who lend support. The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Dharma, a Dharma has many meanings, but all of the translators that I have encountered for this passage and other passages that are similar seem to agree that it's referring to the Buddha's teaching here. The Buddha's teachings or guidance, and the community, the Sangha of supportive individuals. And she who has gone for refuge in these penetrates transcendent wisdom. This indeed is the safe refuge, the refuge that releases from suffering. I think this chapter entitled The Buddha brings up for me the question of what is the Buddha? And there is a wide range of opinion about this, a wide range of practice with the Buddha. And some consider the Buddha a historical figure who was a teacher who left teaching, guidance for us, wisdom teachings. And they more or less stop there. But especially in the later Buddhist traditions, in the Mahayana tradition, the Buddha is considered much more. First of all, there are many Buddhas, many Buddha lands all over, stretching back in limitless time and through limitless space. And secondly, the Buddha becomes a transcendent being, a living presence. People who are not alive can be, in a sense, a living presence. I feel this way about some people in my life who are no longer living. My mother, my first mentor in my chosen career. These are people who are no longer living, but are a living presence for me. It's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it that you may or may not respond to is that, It's necessary to tune the violin every day when you practice because it gets out of tune with minor variations in humidity and temperature. And when it's in tune, and when you play it in tune, when you place your fingers properly on the fingerboard to hit the note that you're intending, not only does the string that you're bowing vibrate, but some of the other strings vibrate as well. If, for instance, you put your third finger on the A string in the first position, the D string will also vibrate because it's an octave apart. And when you play the A string, the E string will also vibrate because it's a fifth apart, and they share overtones. And that gives the instrument the complexity of sound that makes it sing as opposed to just making a tone. I think that as we reflect upon the Buddha's teachings, as we make an effort to practice as best we can, given our circumstance, that one starts to feel sympathetic vibrations with the universe, reality. I think the Buddha is someone who had learned how to, through great effort, learned how to live in harmony with the human condition, with full acceptance. And when we follow that path in one way or another, there is help for us through these sympathetic vibrations that start to reinforce our practice. It's another way of looking at it. That there are vibrations everywhere, and we can either be in harmony, in tune with them, or not. And the Buddha is a guide. So the refuge that is afforded by the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha are a refuge that is not dependent on circumstance, is not dependent on being found out, is not dependent on the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. So I think I'll stop there with the question of what is Buddha? And you don't have to have a simple answer to that, but I think it's something that is worth thinking about, worth discussing, worth mulling over. And I look forward to hearing what thoughts people have about what is Buddha or anything else related to what we've discussed. Thank you very much for listening today. I appreciate you all being here on this holiday weekend, at least a holiday for us in the US. And we'll be back in a few moments. We'll go into breakout rooms now, and I'll see you shortly.